Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Love Fruit podcast. And we are starting again with more interviews. And some of these will be round twos, but we're very open to speaking to anyone who's got something interesting to say about the raw vegan diet, lifestyle, the fruit diet, whatever you want to call it, and or people that have something interesting to say about fruit in general. And our guest today certainly has a lot of interesting things to say, Dr. Doug Graham. And I'll get to a full introduction, but let me just share with you a few things to let you know about in advance. We have a forum, which is school.com/lovefruit. If you want to find that, you can join that forum. That's free. And fruitfest.co.uk for information about UK Fruitfest happening this year, 25th of July to the 1st of August. So very welcome with both of those things. And we'll get on to the podcast. So we have about 100 and I'm not sure it's 150, 160 interviews with people on this kind of diet. So that's what the podcast is about, sharing those stories, really. But we've interviewed quite a lot of people already, and we've interviewed Doug already. So we've heard his story. So you can certainly hear more. So maybe we'll hear something different from Doug today. We will find out. But let me introduce Doug firstly. He is he has many different people sometimes call him the father of the raw food movement, the grandfather of the raw food movement, all these different things. Doug is definitely what you'd call a legend in the raw foods world, someone that a lot of people know about. His book, The 80-10-10 Diet, was a book that kind of changed the game a little bit and was a very necessary book, and is a book that received, I think, from what I understand, quite great success in getting out there into the world and being read by many, many people. So he certainly had a major influence, which I think we'll talk about a little bit. He has also been a high performance coach, both to athletes and to just people who are looking to improve their nutrition in general, and has worked as a chiropractor, as a doctor, helping people improve their health from many, many different backgrounds and scenarios and problems. And he's uh, one of the most established speakers in the world of raw foods, has spoken at many events all over the world, ran his own events, done a whole lot of things, and we'll find out more about him and about what's going on with him at the moment. So, Doug, anything else you'd like to say just to introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, Ronnie, thank you for having me on board. And I'm honored with the wealth of your knowledge. And I know you have expressed a lot of confidence in me, which I take very seriously. And my intention today is adding more value to the breadth of the whole raw food movement.
Yeah, so here's an interesting, well, there's so many interesting questions. I'd like to ask you, though, what do you see as your biggest contribution to health, nutrition, athletics, the raw food diet? Do you see yourself as having made a particular impact or having put across certain ideas that you see as sort of your own in a way?
Well, 30 years ago, when I went to raw food events, the common thread back then was eat raw food, whatever it is, as long as it's raw, it's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what we saw was a tremendous number of people coming into the raw food movement and getting out almost as quickly. I mean, the darn thing just wouldn't grow because there were so many people coming in, and it was like trying to fill a pot with a hole in the bottom. Uh, people from the people from back then, you meet them 2 years later, and they weren't raw, and it was just a flash in the pan sort of an idea, and there was nothing sustainable about it. Uh, and the movement caught on, the idea caught on to a point where there, in by the early 2000s, there were seven different international raw food events around the world, each quite substantial, two, three, 400 people each, and uh, and none of the people running those events, nor any of the people attending those events, have anything to do with raw food these days. It just proved its unsustainability. So it was very frustrating for me to be offering what I felt was a sustainable lifestyle, where most of the other people were just talking about something super radical that you could do to piss people off and be get a lot of notice or notoriety. And where it went from there was it was quite eye opening for me. I went to a an event in Portland, Oregon, and it was considered the big raw food event of I think 2001, 2, and 3. And I'm at the Portland event, and there's all these vendors getting ready to set up their booths. And I looked around, and not only were all of them selling supplements, where I was going with this idea that if my diet is truly sustainable, supplementation, at least on a regular basis, supplementation should never be required. They were going, hey, it's the best diet ever, but you have to supplement. And I'm going, that didn't even make sense. Uh, and and I've got a table full of educational material and no supplements, and they just had supplements. So, and the odd thing was nobody was opening up their booth. Like it wasn't, they weren't ready to function. So I asked somebody what's going on, and they said, well, we're waiting for the truck. And the truck came and delivered, like a big UPS truck came and delivered everybody's stuff. And they all got supplements. They all got these jars of supplements, except they were all the same. Everybody had the exact same supplements. And the thing that made them different was they put their own labels on them. So they spent the next hour, everybody labeling the bottles, but the bottles were all the same. And I go, wow. Um, that's when I started looking more into supplements, to realize that almost all the supplements on the market are all made by the same company anyway, and then they just put different labels on them.
Right.
Even in the health food stores, it's mostly all the same companies, just there's
Mm-hmm.
not that many
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers of supplements. So, but certainly in the raw food movement, they were all using the same stuff and then just putting different labels, um, and that led to a collapse, really, of the raw food movement. By 2005, 6, and I think 2007 was pretty much the end of the raw food movement as it was, of eat anything you want, the more stimulating, the better. Just take all these supplements and you'll be fine. Um,
And would you say, just to cut in, would you say that it was, at one point that was bigger than the plant-based idea? Like like
yeah, the
nowadays,
plant-based idea hadn't even taken hold yet.
right?
That
So
was
the kind of
that was
low fat,
unheard of.
right? Whereas raw at some point was a big deal, just that idea of eat raw foods as long as it's raw, sort of thing.
Yeah, it was as long as it's raw, although they certainly did identify, for the most part, with the idea of vegan.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
raw vegan. But back then there was just vegetarian and vegan, um, and raw was just part of the vegan movement.
Hmm.
Nowadays, the vegans kind of think of raw as something separate. I've had um, there's a pretty big vegan event that happens out in California, and as you know, I ran Health and Fitness Week for 25 years, um, and they were going to offer a program called Health and Fitness Week. So I wrote to him. I said, "Gee, it'd be really great. I've done 25 of these Health and Fitness Weeks. I'd love to come to yours." And they wrote back and said, Doug, it's a vegan event, not a raw event. And that was the first time I'd heard this separatist kind of a thing where I'm going, well, wait a minute, I thought I was part of the vegan movement. Just my own little view. Anyway, so by introducing 80-10-10, which I felt and still feel is a very sustainable way, in 2000, I started, well, actually, 1999 is when I first said 80-10-10 in a presentation. And then spent the next 5 years writing the book. It finally came out in 2005. And by doing that, it it really well, it was sort of the final blow on the old raw food movement, and then breathed new life in, as you would say, like out of the ashes of the raw food movement back then came
Yeah,
80
because
10 10 and the fruit-based diet and much more awareness of eating a lot of fruit rather than just chocolate and nuts.
well, 80-10-10, I think that when I started exploring this, which would be about 2011,
Hmm.
2012, um, definitely 80-10-10 was still the word that was being used a lot for the fruit-based diet,
Hmm.
and not a lot of people would say fruitarian or raw vegan. Well, no, people would say raw vegan, but not really fruitarian that much. 80-10-10 was definitely the plan that a lot of people were talking about. And I I definitely tend to think that my understanding of the history of the raw foods movement is that the idea made sense. So everyone's going, all the other animals are not cooking their food.
Right.
We should be able to do that. Surely there's some diet that works for us. And it can't be a diet that we find completely disgusting to eat. Like that doesn't make sense, right? So it must be foods that we actually enjoy eating. So fruit, that makes sense, but people would try it, couldn't figure it out. People would try eating fruits, vegetables, whatever, nuts and seeds, and could never figure it out and could never figure it out how to do it long term. So people were just doing it short term. So I don't really know how many people like, because a lot of people like to go back to talk about someone from 100 years ago or someone from 150 years ago
Hmm.
and taking that person's information or that what that person said. And I'm always thinking, yeah, but we don't even know what they ate, what they were doing, or anything. We don't really know for sure. And how many of any of these people found a consistent, sustainable program, as you're saying? Basically none. And all those raw food guys you're talking about, who, and it's quite an amazing thing, really, what you said, which is there was people that were putting on events, really involved in this movement. A few years later, they're not even part of it anymore. Now, if you think about other things, if you think about athletics, if you think about chess, if you think about all sorts of things, if someone's putting on events and that deep into it, they're probably
They,
still into it like five, ten
yeah,
years
now
later.
they'd be on television as commentators, or they'd be
Right.
coaches, or they'd be sales reps. If they were
Yeah.
a runner, they'd now be working for a running company or a shoe company or something. They'd still be
Yeah.
involved.
And at the very least, they're still, you know, whatever, a bodybuilder or a gymnast, or they're like they're still
Yeah.
into it in some way. And it is, or if it's martial arts, they're still doing that. So it is really telling that what they were trying to do wasn't sustainable, wasn't something they could really hold as part of life, and probably would have been very disappointing for them to have put that effort and stuff into it. Um, so I do think your contribution has been the 80-10-10 diet has really shown a sustainable way of doing this when it really I don't know if anyone had really written it down properly before. And um that's one of the big contributions I think you made. And I think that I'm talking a lot here, but
It's okay.
there's a lot of people now who are doing fruit-based diets or fruit or raw vegan diets, low-fat raw vegan diets, and I don't think they reference 80-10-10 or you because they're a couple of generations away from it now or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I'll get famous 100 years from now.
the people that trace it back will go, okay, it's really the 80-10-10, you know. I know you're probably not bothered by that, but it seems like the idea of a high fruit, like when I see someone eating 7 or 8 bananas, I'm thinking that's directly influenced from Doug. Like
Sure.
that's not coming from anyone before that. But they're not mentioning you or something. Maybe they do know about you, but they're not like
No, they probably
they
don't.
don't want to give you a reference for it.
We, we currently are not rich with leaders that are readers. You know, like reading has kind of. I was raised in a time where they said if you want to become a leader, be a reader.
Right.
But today's leaders aren't well read for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know their history. They don't even know their raw vegan history. Um, and and that's okay. It is what it is. I don't sit in judgment of that. I just know that, yeah, a lot of times they don't know where where the idea came from. A lot of people think they invented everything, and, and I know I certainly didn't invent anything. I just took basic nutrition and made it user friendly in a raw vegan diet.
Yeah.
Um, my background is mostly education, and I studied a lot of nutrition all the way through school. So I just took the basics of nutrition and said, okay, how do I make that work on a raw vegan diet? And it,
Hmm.
as you said, it had to taste good, and it obviously had to have been done, um, or human beings wouldn't have survived their earliest days. Um, so
Was
it's
it
it's
quite?
been sort of fun. I look now and I go, there's easily 100 raw leaders out there who have been through some or a lot of my training.
Mm-hmm.
So when the question is the effect that I've had, the effect is training teachers to foster the movement even more. And I know there's at least 100 out there now, most of whom I think I could name off the top of my head, and more coming all the time. I mean, I am still running a coaching program for people who want to become
Sure.
coaches in raw vegan.
Sure. Sure. Um, I think that there's something that I guess I want to mention is the idea that, and maybe this has always been a part of this, where the raw foods diet, even a vegan diet, a healthier diet, we can point to a number of things and say it's healthier because of this and this and this, but we still see people coming to harm who are in the raw, who are in the kind of the raw community in some way,
Sure,
and sometimes people even dying quite younger than they really should, having problems.
very much so.
Is this always been a thing? Why has this happened? So it feels like it's happened an unusual amount. I've got my own ideas, but I'd like to hear yourself.
I think there's two things at least involved. Number one is those people exist on every diet. So a certain amount of them find their way to a raw food diet. Just, I mean, I'm confident you're aware that disordered eating and eating disorders are rampant in the general population.
Yes.
Even more so in the athletic population, in the ballet, in the gymnasts, in the
I didn't know that.
track and field. I mean,
Right.
it's really rampant in a
Right.
lot of. I mean, look at the bodybuilders. Tell me that's not disordered eating. Um, so we get a certain percentage of them, but then there's another aspect that I alluded to earlier that the raw food diet is considered by many to be radical. I consider it ultra conservative, but many people consider it radical,
Mm.
and young people are often drawn to those radical extremes. Um, and so perhaps we get even more than our fair share, um, especially of those younger, what you call easily swayed population that come in and go, well, I'm doing raw foods now, and it's really upset my parents, so I love it. And and I think we do get more than our share of. I don't know if I can say this without sounding too judgmental, but our share of crazies. We do get more than our share of crazies. Just because the program isn't mainstream.
Mm.
Uh, Add on top of that exactly what you said, Ronnie. A lot of people haven't figured out how to eat raw food in a sustainable fashion. And so they'll say, well, watermelon tastes really good. I'm just going to live on watermelon. I met a guy did that with oranges. I met a guy did that with watermelon. I met a guy did that with tomatoes. Um, um, and a lot of girls just go, well, I think I'm fatter than I want to be, so I'm just going to eat juicy fruits, and I'm going to live on juicy fruits. And it's they read they read book titles like I live on fruit, and they think that that means the person lives on fruit, which is a different. It has a different meaning. The authors openly agree that they eat fruity vegetables as well as fruit, um, and and those vegetables are an important part of their diet as well. So uh, a lot of people, for one reason or another, just don't understand how to do it properly, and doing it improperly, especially when you just stick to your guns, um, you ends up in failures. It ends up in some serious failures. I've met a few of them, uh, ladies that ladies that weigh 4 stone, and it's just not cool.
So that's, I mean, and that would be included in the eating disorder side of things, where people are not listening to your information, and whether they were always eating disorder people that found the fruit diet as something that was a good
Exactly.
way of hiding it or something. And I think there's something, what I've realized sometimes when I'm putting out a video now or something, I realize I've got a message for most people, and then there's a message for for that crowd that's a little bit different. So I was making this video today. I was talking about, you know, people shouldn't be too concerned about getting so much fat, and then people worry about getting healthy fats and making sure they've got all whatever avocados, coconuts. And I was saying, really, most people don't need to worry about making sure they're getting healthy fats or eating all the nuts and seeds and all that stuff. Um, but then I was thinking, but there's a portion of the audience who are avoiding nuts, seeds, avocados, bananas, anything that's high calories,
Right.
because it's just like, and claiming that they don't do well on those things, but really they don't like the scale going up to normal when they when they eat those things. Um, but I would what I want to say is the other side of this, whereas because of the radical side of it, because of the natural side of it, there's something about not wanting to rely, like this idea of the fruit diet. We rely on nature supposedly, even though no one's really living off their own fruit, that many people anyway. Um, but there's a romance to the idea that I don't need to live off of people and companies and products and all this stuff, and avoiding therefore medical advice, the medical system, various things, avoiding maybe basic hygiene, who like
Hmm.
all sorts. things that they're avoiding, uh, and maybe even living in places that are not the safest places to live, healthiest places. They might be very sunny, but not the might have more problems health wise in some of these areas and disease carrying insects and stuff like that. So, do you think there's that side as well of basically people avoiding help sometimes when they get sick?
Yeah. Yes, there is, Ronnie. There is. And this is the deal is when, as a doctor, I work with people on an individual basis, one on one. That's how I work. I'm looking into doing some group things,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, it's one on one. I deal with one person at a time, just like every other doctor, every other dentist. Uh, and yet, giving generic advice to the average mass of the population, that's easy. Then there's this fringe over here and this fringe over here and this fringe, and they hear things through their own filters. We all hear through our own filters, but the fringes they hear through a really different filter. One, as you say, you almost feel as if you have to give a different message. Oh, and if you're over on the fringe, well then let's realize for starters that 80-10-10 and the whole fruitarian concept is already the fringe. So we're dealing with the fringe of the fringe. And it's a really small population. Yet when somebody weighs, as I say, 4 stone um, or less, and then they die, uh, and and the blame is put on, oh well, she was eating a fruitarian diet. And I go, wait a minute, the problem existed long before
Mm.
this girl ever found fruitarian diet.
Yeah.
Um, kind of like blaming Steve Jobs' pancreatic cancer on raw food. No, he had pancreatic cancer and then went to raw food. Um, so getting our ducks in a row and lined up in the right order. I care about every one of those individuals. I mean, my work is with individuals, and so when I see somebody that, I mean, I went to Bali last year for the first Bali event,
Mm-hmm.
first 80-10-10 Bali event, and at the very first talk I did, there were 3 girls who were so thin that it was scary. It was truly scary. Um, and I reached out to each one of them individually, said, look, if you want some help, if you want some guidance, I'm here for you. I'm more than happy to talk with you and guide you through and find out what's going on. Um, but they were all 3 of them very diligently said, no, 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 no. We like what we're doing.
Oh God.
We're going to, I'm sticking with what I'm doing. It's working really well. I'm going,
Ah,
I'm going like 3 pound eight, 3 stone eight, isn't working really well.
it's the worst thing that I see with the nutrition stuff is eating disorders. Really, like the worst thing. Especially,
Yeah.
I mean, they were so young. I mean, I know when I saw one of the girls, she was very young,
Yeah.
and
One was 35. She died at 35.
yeah, and
It's sad. It's very sad. Yet the problem existed long before she went raw.
hmm
And, um, she just carried it over into raw and insisted that everything was just fine. She just only liked watermelon, so she was just gonna. She said, "I eat great volumes of food. I'm not anorexic. I eat great volumes." I go, "Yeah, but it's only watermelon." And she goes, "No, no, no. I eat cucumber too." I'm going like, "Yeah, but there's next to nothing in either one of them." Yeah, there's some sugar. I don't mean to knock it. Watermelon's great food, and so are cucumbers. along with the rest of the raw food diet. So
But it is one of the things, eating enough volume of fruit. If you want watermelon to be one of your staples, then you have to
eat,
really have an
you have
awareness
to
of how
eat one.
much. Yeah.
You don't eat
Oh
some
yeah,
watermelon. You have to eat a watermelon.
at least.
Yeah.
And people don't, yeah, so it's people resist that, I think, because one of the one of your teachings really, I think, and the reason I think people failed in the raw food diet for a long time is that no one was brought up eating fruit. No one was around eating fruit around them.
Mhm.
And simply the volume of fruit that's normal to eat for
It's a
primates.
completely new rethink.
Yeah.
What's
And
what's a normal volume of food?
yeah, and it's a longer period of time of eating. It's not 10 minutes wolfing down a watermelon. Well, I wouldn't do that personally.
No,
Right?
no.
So, um, so it's a total rethink. And it, I think there is a sense, I understand that for me, I didn't believe it when I first was playing around with this, and I was thinking, it can't be that much. It can't be, and even looking at the figuring out the calories and all that and weighing it all out and thinking it can't be that much. Why, like, surely it's just a plate I have to eat, you know? And it's obviously not. So it people resist that a lot. At the same time, most of those people just fall off the diet and go back to eating other things. They don't
Mhm.
resolutely stick to it to the point that they're, so underweight. Um, yeah, that's I agree with you. Like, and eating disorders are very prevalent in on all diets, and a lot
Absolutely.
bigger than people realize, and it's a very bad thing. Um, so I think you maybe had. Do you have anything else to say about that?
Well, just it's sort of funny. We give it attention and it deserves attention. And yet by giving it even a little attention, we're already giving it a
Hmm.
disproportionate amount of attention. Whereas spend in order to spend an equivalent amount of time with the vast majority of people, we'd have to talk until dawn
Yeah,
because we're really talking. And the weird thing, as you've mentioned again, Ronnie, is that sometimes I feel with many of the um, people that their eating has become a bit disordered, that I could talk until dawn
sure.
with no effect whatsoever.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that is.
So I'm almost wasting my time,
Yeah,
and yet I care.
I,
I
I, and I think the worst thing I just want to say, and this is what myself is running the UK Fruit Fest, where I thought many years ago we create this event for raw vegans, and the raw vegans will come. And what I started to realize is the raw vegans go to Bali or Thailand or Costa Rica or something. They're not coming to these festivals and events, which is really what they sort of need to do, or
It would be
retreats, events,
fantastic if they came to the UK Fruit Fest. They should
and
all be there.
and they would have a great time. They
Yep.
would have the time of their life and everything. But I would find, and with the other events that I enjoyed so much just as an attendee, and would say to people, "You got to come to this. It's so close to where you live and everything," and they would just say, "Why would I go to that? I can use that money to go to Thailand or somewhere or whatever." And then those people would fail and sometimes get into dangerous situations. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but people going away somewhere on their own where they don't know people, they're not supervised. Some of these people are maybe a bit vulnerable as well. It's a real disaster waiting to happen
Often
for
is.
some.
It often is.
And what do you think about this? Because I really think we need community. I think we really need people around us. I think we need the support of people. I think sometimes I hear people wanting to say that they're independent, they don't need anyone else. I really don't believe that. I think we're all pretty dependent or interdependent. Um, And I even think when it comes to eating this diet, it's a social experience. Ideally, it should be eaten together as eating generally is for, once again, for primates. And I think that that's a part of the diet that's missing for a lot of people is they're going away on their own to different places, trying to figure all this out, and they miss something in that experience.
Um, I think that loneliness is one of the big, big obstacles in being different. Uh, and I spend my life being different and working with people who don't fit into the mass. You know, we're um, pretty much any client I've ever had uh, is a very small percentage of the general population. They're different. They they think differently. They think for themselves. Uh, they they are they're not watching TV. And I agree. I think coming to the UK Fruit Fest and sitting down with 100 people, or in some cases more than that even, uh, and everybody's eating lunch or everybody's eating dinner, and you get a chance to rub shoulders with the successful people and see you or me or some of the others go in and getting seconds and then getting thirds and maybe even getting fourths because it's so delicious and nutritious and feels right. And um, that whole social experience is a huge part of what makes the event.
Mm.
And uh, it's something people, well, are willing to wait in line to share a
Mm.
chance to sit down and eat together,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a big part of it. And um, as I say, I think loneliness is is one of the big concerns on a raw food diet, and
Yeah.
and that can completely be overcome at UK Fruit Fest. It's a chance for people to make lifetime friends. I know many people who have made lifetime friendships there, and I'm if you haven't been, you should be going, and if you have been, you definitely are coming
Well,
back.
the funny, what I think's been funny, I think one of my big lessons with running this event has been the assuming we would get the raw food world to come, and raw vegans would obviously go, this is a plate where they serve my diet. It's the people that do my diet. It's education around my diet lifestyle, the stuff that I'm researching and interested in. That's a no-brainer. But I've found that it's not what a lot of people are looking for. And I understand that now. I understand that a bit better now. Um, and this is something you'll find probably be kind of funny, Doug. So a guy messages me, says, I'm thinking of doing a fruit festival in Portugal. Could I speak to you and get some of your ideas? And I said, okay. And we chatted a little bit. One of my first questions, so you want to start a fruit festival? How many have you been to?
None.
None. Okay. Why have you not been to any? And he kind of explained, well, it just, it looks like sort of campaign and things and whatever sharing rooms would be. It looks a little bit basic and it just, it's not the kind of thing I really interest or whatever. He had some kind of explanation like this about whatever it was. And he had ideas about what he thought it was as well, and various ideas. And I said to him, well, what you're saying is not really what the event is. And that's some part of the struggle we have is putting across to people what it actually is. But the fact that you are interested in these things and have never been to one is a big sign as to the why I would say that maybe you don't want to, maybe it's not a good idea for you to be doing this. Like,
Well, so two things came to mind. One is I where I thought you were going to say is, well, wouldn't you imagine the same receiving the same
yeah,
objections to your event? and having to deal with that. So knowing why you didn't attend festivals first um, should be an important part of creating a festival. Uh, but I've had the exact same experience, Ronnie. I go online once in a while and just look at the reviews of 80-10-10. And the first three reviews that I watched were by leaders in the raw food movement. And each of them said, I've never read the book, but here's my review. And that's what this guy just gave you, right? Like he says, okay, I've never been to your festival, but here I'm going to review it for you.
Well, it to me it just spoke volumes. I'm like,
Hmm. I
now
agree.
now this guy has he's got some good things in his favor, so he might actually be able to run a successful event and do things good for himself.
Good.
Whether he'll do it for a long time, I don't know. I but just that basic thing of like, can you not see that if you're not going to go, like maybe you should do a different style of event. Like maybe you need to do something that you would go along to. Because I've been to 40 fruit festivals, I would say, something like close to that. But there's not a lot of me around. And I don't know if I don't know if you can get every one of me to come to your event, especially if you've never, if you've never been to any other events. Um, so it's a really funny thing. But I do tend to think that something, well, I think that we've rushed to trying to make these festivals, and really there should be more of a local scene happening all over the place.
Oh,
There's not
yeah.
even really raw food restaurants. There's not much going on in that. There's not a lot of potlucks out there. So I think maybe back to the basics of for people out there who are saying, I want to do some big event. Have you done a potluck? Have you had a dinner party? Have you invited people? Just see how difficult that is, and, and then imagine doing that for hundreds of people or whatever.
Well, I get the same thing from people all the time. They come up to me after a talk and and say, "Well, I want to do what you do."
Hmm.
And I go, "Do you have any idea what I do?" I mean, to put together a good hour-long talk takes me about 40 hours. Do you want to put 40 hours in, or do you just want to show up on stage and talk? Um, I, they, most people don't realize that the amount of time that you put into creating UK Fruit Fest. They have no idea how much time and effort and thought goes into creating a presentation that looks like it required no effort or thought or work in advance.
Hmm.
Like like
Yeah.
I want to make it look that effortless by being that well prepared.
Well, I'd like to, in that vein, I did have a question floating through my head, which I was wondering, in your time of going to events, and perhaps when you were still learning and researching yourself, it doesn't have to be someone that had the right information, perhaps, but who were did any particular speakers really impress you? Maybe they had particular charisma, presentation skills. Do you have memories of certain people
Sure.
that might not be active anymore, but that were particularly impactful?
Well, my original training for public speaking had nothing to do with raw foods. Um, and so when I first went, um, forgive me if I don't give you names here, but I went to a presentation that was one of the best presentations I've ever been to. The guy, the guy was a medical doctor, and he had the most compelling stories that I've ever heard, real case histories, and they were the most moving, heart wrenching stories that I've ever heard. He was an absolutely terrible speaker, but his information was riveting, just riveting. Um, and then I went to another guy who was considered one of the best storytellers in the world. His his ability to make stories that you could see the pictures of his words. Um, Again, I'll use the word riveting. Like you just sat on the edge of your seat and listened to his every word drip out of his mouth, and it was spectacular. And yet, the content was almost none, but great stories. And even a third guy who worked for National Geographic, and he had he was a photographer for National Geographic, and he put it all together. His presentation skills were good, and his story was good, and his style. I mean, everything from start to finish was A plus. And I go, that's the kind of thing I want to do. When I finally hit the stage um, in the early '90s and finally got a chance to start giving presentations, so they were styled after that, where I could catch people from every level and and be as attentive to my audience as if I was just doing a one-on-one.
Mm.
Definitely, there were many people influenced me. I remember watching Tony Robbins give a talk and had a great balance between information and his heart. I mean, there's a reason why he's making $1 million per presentation, um, and and getting it. You know, I mean, that's quite something. Um, and being able to touch people. I mean, probably the most talented of all, the one I've never seen fail at a presentation ever is Rosalyn.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, put her on stage, it's going to be a hit. It's going to be a home run. Pretty much, I'm going to say every time I've never seen her hit anything but a home run.
Mm. Mm.
And I've watched her give a lot of presentations in my life. It's always a home run. So she's got speech and theater background.
Hmm.
So she's got stage background, and then she's an incredibly sensitive person, and she combines those with the brains and the information so that it just always comes out great every time. So yeah, people definitely influenced me. A lot of the influence was, wow, I don't want to do that. Wow, I don't want to do that. I I'd like to be more prepared than that, or I'd like to um, make a point of of never talking down to my audience like that. Or no, again, no names.
Mm.
I
But what?
did go to a lot of presentations and learned what made him good. TC Fry gave brilliant presentations. He knew how to touch people.
Mm.
Yeah,
I don't think there's much footage of him at all, or not publicly.
I don't think so.
Mm.
There's some videos he did with Ralph Sinkay called Nutrition in a Nutshell, a
Mm.
series of presentations um, of him and Ralph just sitting in a kind of a living room setting and talking.
Hmm.
But he and I traveled together quite a bit and did weekend seminars. Um, so I got to see him, but none of that was ever recorded. Never.
Mm. 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 Yeah, kind of a shame, I guess. But let me think. You had a few things you wanted to touch upon today, is that right?
Well, yeah, what I wanted to touch on was more the what I call the broad base of 80-10-10 and hence the raw food movement, which again I think the Fruit Festival conveys really well, that it's much more than just the food, that it is the social interactions, that it is the fun, that it is the intellectual conversations, that it is the fitness awareness. And the number of people that have come to me in the last couple of years that have said, I just focused on the food and I did the food and I got it so right. And now I'm realizing why your business is called Food and Sport. And I've neglected that other half of the package. And the food doesn't really work well without the sport, does it, Doug? And I'm going, no, but I'm happy to train you on the fitness side of things and help you get that back under control. And and realize that for every one of us, certainly for myself, my overall health is never better than the weakest link in my program, whatever that might be, whether that's my sleep or my fitness or my strength or my um,
Mm-hmm.
my food aspect. It defies all possibilities to that I could be better than the weakest link. Just can't stretch out there.
Sure.
Somebody wrote to me today and said, my husband's been ill. The numbers are improving, but he's not. And I go, well, the numbers will improve before he does. He can't improve before the numbers do. I mean, it's got to be the order of events has to be that the numbers improve on his blood workups before he can start to demonstrate that.
Mm,
If he was getting results before the numbers improved, then the numbers would be meaningless.
mm.
So the same thing here. I know. I remember when I first met you, and um, I was impressed by your dedication with basketball, and you were really putting a lot into basketball. And I'm going, yeah, there's got to be something. And I know over the years, you've done a lot of martial arts and now doing some more strength training as well. You're living, what do they call it? Walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Well,
And
yeah, my fitness has been neglected a little bit over the years, I'd suggest, but yeah.
so, and then we do something about that. Um, you know, so when my fitness gets neglected, I see it right away. I mean, I have certain parameters that I expect. There's a hill in Costa Rica that I run up every winter, and I know how long it's supposed to take me. And if it takes me longer than that, I'm doing something wrong. This year I was quick up the hill,
Mm,
and and I have lifting parameters where I know how much I can lift, and I know how much I expect of myself. And my intention is winning national championships again this June, so you can introduce me as a two-time national champion. Um, yeah, if somebody beats me, somebody beats me. But I'm training as though I intend to win,
yeah, yeah.
um, and and the rest of my standards I hold equally high. It for me that's important to hold a very high standard and then live up to it with all the practice required to live up to that standard.
Yeah,
Same as when I watch you play guitar. As soon as I see you with a guitar in your hands, I go, that man is a musician. That man is professional with his guitar. You put in time. And
yeah, yeah. I think that I want to talk about fitness a little bit, but I don't. You maybe not got a lot of time left.
I have a little.
Okay, we'll go. What I really enjoyed looking back on the 8 10 10 events I went to earlier on was that it was quite dominated by athletes, or maybe athletes are just draw a lot of attention to themselves or get a lot of
Mm,
attention, whatever it is. Um, but if you think about the Woodstock Festival, you had Mike, an ultra marathon runner, I think won ultra marathon races. You had multiple people in the speakers who had ran marathons, who had
Sure.
done strength training, bodybuilding training, done various sports. Within the audience, there was triathletes, there was people that wanted to go to the Olympics, maybe they weren't quite in the Olympics or whatever. There were people that had set records. There were, it was you looked around and people had muscles, had fitness, had great physiques. It was very impressive. And I think that is a very important part of this. It's the diet and the lifestyle should lead to activity. And I think that too many people have fallen into the habit of perhaps not eating enough or whatever it is, and it leads to the opposite. Or a high fat diet or whatever it is that leads to the opposite. And there's been times where it feels like what's taken over a bit is the detox message, cleansing and using this as this diet that is just about healing, which is okay
Well,
in
I
some
think
ways.
certainly that's true. And at the same time, uh, we have to look at how life has changed over the last few decades and many decades. Life used to be physical. It's become far more mental. Uh, I get messages from my phone telling me how many hours I've spent on screen and how much screen time I put in. And I go, no, that's not even possible. You know, um, whereas life used to be much more physical.
Mm.
Raking the leaves wasn't considered fitness activity. That was just part of doing the chores. Walking the dog wasn't fitness activity. That was just going for a walk.
Mm.
Um, I I drove a car yesterday uh, on a long, slight downhill, and the car wasn't yet turned on, so the brakes were manual, and the steering was manual, and it was hard work to drive a car with manual steering and manual brakes. People forget. So almost everything we do nowadays is just push a button, or it's automatic, or it's power this, power that. And we still live in these physical bodies that require movement and require strength and require flexibility and require agility in order to function well, or they degenerate quickly. So taking care of the physical part of the body is more than just eating the food. It's definitely fitness activities. I think are perhaps more necessary today than they've ever been before. I mean, when people had physical jobs, um, going out to do fitness activities maybe was optional. But even now, I mean, I've got a good friend who digs holes for a living, and for the gas company, he digs holes, and it's incredibly hard manual labor. And still, he goes to the gym and lifts after work. Um, so, but he's the exception, whereas most people aren't working hard physical labor, and they're not going to the gym either or doing anything else that's keeping their fitness levels high. I the diet works whether you do fitness activity or not. Health requires fitness activity. So you can make a raw food diet work without doing fitness, but you can't make health happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, well, what else are you up to these days, and what are you focusing on at the moment?
Um, I'm currently creating um, a couple of things. One that's kind of important to me is what I'm calling distinctions. And over the years, I've either coined a lot of distinctions or learned a lot of distinctions, like what we just said. The diet will work without doing fitness. Health won't. Health requires fitness. So this is like a distinction, and I'm compiling a bunch of these distinctions in order to make them available in one place eventually. Uh, and I'm putting my energy into the coaching program. Uh, I feel this is a really important part of my work here on the earth. Is People say, what do you want to leave behind? What I want to leave behind is an army of coaches. I want to leave enough people behind who are coaching that 80-10-10 lives on into whatever notoriety it's going to get. I would like 80-10-10 to become the norm and everything else become the fringe.
Mm.
I think I can imagine a day where raw foods are the norm, where vegan is the mass majority and most of them are eating raw foods. And and to me, changing the entire awareness of humanity towards that end of getting people to live far more healthful or health inducing lives, for me, is a responsibility that I'm willing to take on. So, greater outreach, greater public awareness of the raw food movement, um, getting out there in as many ways as I can, including like your guy in Portugal. If he wants, he can tell him I'm happy to coach him a little bit to get him started if he wants to start an event of any kind. I'm glad he asked you. Of all the people, you've run the most successful of all the raw food events and long standing. Uh, and he's welcome to ask me as well.
Well, very cool. Um, so where can people find more information about you, follow you, and all that kind of stuff?
They can go to foodandsport.com. It's the word food, the letter N like Nancy, and the word sport. There's 10 letters in total. Amazing how many people spell it AND. It's food, the letter N, sport. At foodandsport.com, they can find me. I've got a YouTube channel, Food and Sport YouTube channel, Dr. Doug Graham channel. I'm on Instagram as well if they want to reach me that way. Um, I'll be in Bali this year running an event that is, in my opinion, um, it has taken over for what used to be my Health and Fitness Week. It's now my premier event of the year. Bringing my favorite chef. I'm bringing my all-time favorite teachers, and for me, this event beats everything else I'm doing. Uh, 9 days in Bali is. It, I don't know if people will live without coming to this thing. I mean, I know you're going to come, so how could you miss Bali?
Absolutely. Well,
Ah,
thank you very much for joining us today, Doug.
Ronnie, it's totally my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, really,
Hmm.
to come and spend some time with you, to talk with you, and see what's going on in your world and my world, and um, share a little insight, a little history, and look forward to just a beautiful raw year. Please, if you would, get me the same weather that you brought us last year at the UK Fruit Fest. If you can do that again, that would just be spectacular.
It sure would. It sure would. That was 1 year the weather was perfect the whole time. So
It was perfect at
yeah.
all times, day
Hmm.
and night. It didn't even matter. It was just brilliant. So
I'm
let's do
sure I'm sure we'll speak about that year for many years to come.
that.
Uh,
I hope not. I hope we talk about this year for many years to go.
well, thanks, Doug. And everyone that's watching and listening, obviously read Data 1010 Diet and check out what Doug's doing. You can go to our forum and you can join for free. School.com/lovefruit if you want to check that out. And UK Fruitfest information's at fruitfest.co.uk. You're very welcome to come. And please feel free to listen to the rest of these podcasts. Thank you very much for your support.
Absolutely.
And see you in the next interview. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys. Go to health, everybody.